Welcome back to Crime Chronicles. Today we look at two of the hardest men to come from their respective areas in the UK. They spent time in prison together, had similar upbringings, and used violence to instill fear in those around them. The gritty streets of the United Kingdom have long been the backdrop for stories of tough men who have risen to infamy through their fighting prowess and criminal exploits. Among these legendary figures, the rivalry between Lee Duffy and Paul Sykes stands out as a particularly fierce and notable chapter in the annals of British hardmen. Both men were notorious in their own right, with Duffy's violent reputation in Teesside and Sykes' fearsome legacy in Yorkshire. Stay tuned as we delve into the lives of these two men, exploring the nature of their rivalry and its impact on their respective legacies. Lee Duffy, the Teeside Terror, born in South Bank, Middlesbrough in 1965, quickly became one of the most feared men in Teesside. His early life was marked by a descent into crime and violence, which began in his teenage years. By the time he reached adulthood, Duffy had established himself as a formidable street fighter and enforcer. His reputation was built on a combination of physical prowess, fearlessness, and a relentless drive to dominate the criminal underworld of Middlesbrough. Duffy's imposing physique, standing over 6 feet tall and muscular, made him a daunting opponent. He was known for his brutal fighting style, which often left his adversaries severely injured. His notoriety was such that many in Teesside either feared or respected him, and he became a central figure in the region's criminal activities, including drug dealing, extortion, and protection rackets. Despite his fearsome reputation, Duffy's life was also marked by a series of personal struggles. His aggressive lifestyle led to numerous run-ins with the law, resulting in multiple incarcerations. These periods behind bars did little to deter him, and he often emerged from prison more determined to maintain his status as Teesside's top hardman. Paul Sykes, born in Wakefield, Yorkshire in 1946, was another iconic figure in the world of British hardmen. Sykes' early life was tumultuous, with a troubled childhood that saw him frequently in and out of reform schools and ball stalls. His entry into the world of professional boxing offered a brief respite from his criminal activities. Sykes had a moderately successful career in the ring, even fighting some notable opponents. However, his violent tendencies and criminal activities overshadowed his boxing achievements. Sykes' reputation as a hard man was cemented not just by his boxing prowess, but also by his fearsome demeanour and willingness to engage in brutal street fights. He was a larger-than-life character, known for his confrontational style and his ability to intimidate those around him. His criminal exploits included armed robbery, extortion, and other violent offences, which led to numerous prison sentences. While incarcerated, Sykes became known for his physical strength and fighting skills, often challenging and defeating other inmates. His life behind bars was the subject of a documentary that further solidified his reputation as one of Britain's toughest men. Despite his violent past, Sykes had a complex personality, capable of moments of introspection and charm, which added to his mystique. The paths of Lee Duffy and Paul Sykes inevitably crossed due to their overlapping criminal activities and reputations as formidable fighters. Both men were in Durham prison at the same time during the 1980s. Their rivalry was fueled by a clash of egos and the desire to be recognised as the preeminent hardman in their respective regions, and the need to be the alpha male of the prison. The exact details of their encounters are shrouded in street law and varying accounts, and it's widely accepted that their rivalry was never marked by an actual physical confrontation. Both men had little regard for authority and an intense need to assert their dominance, which naturally put them on a collision course. Although they were both in prison at the same time, efforts were made by staff to keep the men at opposite ends of the facility, knowing that things could get bad if they crossed paths. Lee made it well known that he hated Sykes, based on some rumours he had heard about the man on the inside. The rivalry between Lee Duffy and Paul Sykes left a lasting impact on the criminal underworlds of Teesside and Yorkshire. Both men's reputations were enhanced by their rivalry, each being seen as a worthy adversary by those who knew them or had heard of their exploits. There are stories of them randomly meeting in a bar several years later, and although Lee Duffy could be a loose cannon, reports of the encounter say that he turned his back on Sykes and wouldn't engage with him. Lee Duffy's life came to a violent end in 1991 when he was stabbed to death at the age of 26. His death marked the end of an era in Teesside, but his legacy lived on through the numerous stories of his fearsome presence and brutal fights. Duffy's life has since been the subject of several books and documentaries, further immortalising his status as a legendary hardman. Paul Sykes, on the other hand, lived a longer life but continued to struggle with his demons. He passed away in 2007 at the age of 60, after years of battling alcoholism and health issues. Despite his violent past, Sykes' life also contained moments of reflection and attempts at reform, which added a layer of complexity to his legacy. Like Duffy, Sykes' life has been chronicled in books and documentaries, ensuring that his story remains part of the lore of British hardmen. The stories of Lee Duffy and Paul Sykes highlight the cultural fascination with the archetype of the old-school hardman in the UK. These individuals often emerge from challenging backgrounds, their lives marked by violence, crime, and a relentless pursuit of respect and recognition. The public's interest in such figures is multifaceted, encompassing a mix of admiration, fear, and curiosity about what drives men to live such extreme lives. Duffy and Sykes, in particular, embody the qualities that make for compelling hardman narratives: physical toughness, a willingness to confront danger head-on, and an ability to dominate their peers through sheer force of will. The rivalry, if there was one between Lee Duffy and Paul Sykes, remains a compelling chapter in the history of British hardmen. Duffy and Sykes were products of their environments, shaped by the harsh realities of life in Teesside and Yorkshire respectively. Their stories are a blend of brutality, tragedy, and the relentless pursuit of respect. Famous UK inmate Charles Bronson described Paul Sykes as a legend born and bred, and wrote in his book that in the early 70s, Sykes was probably the fittest convict in Britain. If Sykes had had longer periods outside of prison during his earlier years, he might have been able to focus properly on a boxing career. But after spending much of his adult life behind bars, his chance to become a great boxer came too late. By 1990, he had spent 21 out of the previous 26 years in 18 different prisons. Lee Duffy also never managed to fulfill his potential, being killed in a street fight at only 26 years of age. Both of these men came up at a different time in the UK, and based on what we know of them both, if they had ever faced off against one another, we'd be putting our money on Paul Sykes. Thank you for joining us today on Crime Chronicles. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends.